Hurricane Joaquin may not be a direct hit, but that doesn't mean it's not going to create a big mess. 5 states declaring a state of emergency, bracing for storm surges and severe flooding. But Susie, what happened to all those disaster funds spent to prevent this type of flooding?
Well, you know, this is reminds me a lot of when you have say you have a really well-to-do relative who lives out someplace that can't see you, and like, you know, a rich aunt in Montana who pays for you to go to college, and she can't see what you're doing every day at college. You could be partying your brains out, you could be studying, and that's sort of the analogy of the federal government paying for federal disaster dollars that are going to be spent in the states. There's no accountability. Who knows? Everybody's happy that the money exists. Oh, thank goodness the federal government comes in and they empty out a truckload of money when these storms are coming, and I have no idea how that money's spent, and neither do you, and nobody knows. But the money gets out the door, and there's no accountability. There's no check. There's no consequence if it's not spent to prevent later. And it's a very strange system. And some people want FEMA to go away completely. That feels wrong to me. I feel like we need a federal emergency disaster organization, but one that has got some kind of oversight.
Jonas, you've seen prevention in Miami, where we note you you're there quite frequently.
Let me tell you, I can't make it to the studio with the floods on the streets, and the city actually has taken property tax money, because they don't have income taxes in Florida, and has put hundreds of millions of dollars into pumps and raising roads so you can live there when waters come up, whether it was from the moon this week or from floods or from hurricanes, and that makes people want to live there, and they pay tax. So there's a way to do this, and that is one of the best examples in this country. I will say Sandy has improved things. It's better than it was before. The government doesn't subsidize your flood insurance on your vacation home like they used to. They make you essentially raise your house up to a higher level now. So if the same Sandy happened, it would be less costly than the last time. That said, they still essentially subsidize living in these dangerous, expensive areas.
John?
Jonas, you can't make it to the studio in Miami because you're perpetually late.
It's the floods, I tell you.
It could be a drought and you couldn't make it to the studio on time. Look, I do agree with a lot of private insurance. I do agree with building mandates. You see that in a lot of areas that have hurricanes, and it does make a big difference. There are certain things that we do need the government to step in on. But you look at Sandy. There was a request for Alaskan fish hatchery. Up from that money. You wonder where that money goes? Susie's right. Nobody knows. You look at the prevention at Katrina. It wasn't there. People said for years, even decades, that those levees could break. We are a reactive government, not a proactive government. We can save so much more money through prevention. It's like the drought in California. When it rains, say, oh, it's over with. Nothing will be done to fix it long term. We got to be more proactive in this government, in this United States.
Well, Gary B., should the people who live in the flood-prone areas pay for the prevention? You don't believe in FEMA, basically.
I don't. You know, Susie mentioned that she thought FEMA should exist. I guess I'm one of those people who don't, for a variety of reasons. One is the waste, but two, more importantly, 29 states fund the disaster relief bill for the other 21. That doesn't sound fair to me. If you choose, for example, I live on a little canal here. I pay through the nose for flood insurance and extra flood insurance. I'm not putting that on the government. And likewise, you know, Jonas living in Miami, you know, you live in an area that's prone to hurricanes, tornadoes, floods, whatever. That's your choice. And the states should be responsible, and more importantly, the individual, not the federal government. The federal government can't manage anything. So just to have this blanket out there, believe me, the governors, when FEMA was enacted and the bill was enacted, learned how to game the system immediately. That's why the money is so wasteful.
Emily, weigh in here.
Look, all of these things that we're calling for that we think would be helpful, like having better infrastructure, having more prevention put in place, having more oversight, these are things that you just do not get when you continuously cut and cut away at the government. It would be great to have more oversight, but don't you have to fund that? Prevention would be great. Don't you have to fund that? Those are things that you actually have to put in place. And the biggest problem with where we get into with things like flood, tornadoes, hurricanes, is that many often in the Republican Party are so reactive to the idea of extreme weather being caused by climate change that they actually write it into bills that you can't have any money that would be related to it.
Go ahead,
but it
John.
actually ends up harming the people.
Because the stimulus package is supposed to go straight to infrastructure, and you don't see any rise in infrastructure in that entire almost $1 trillion. So you can't blame this on the Republican Party. The Democrats got that. They did not spend it. They spent it to shore up pensions and union jobs and state deficits. So you can't blame that. All these guys are to blame about infrastructure spending. Infrastructure spending is not going to happen. Don't even start it.
Okay, last word. Thanks, guys. And Cavuto on business in about 15 minutes from now. Hey, Neil, what do you got?
Hey, Brenda. Well, first ISIS. Now, Russia is creating a whole new crisis in Syria. But Donald Trump really doesn't see it quite that way. He says, let them drop their bombs. We're the ones who saved the bucks. Is he right or wrong? And we may have dodged a bullet from this storm, but if billionaire investor Carl Icahn is right, no one is safe from the next financial storm. What he sees coming and when. We'll see you soon.
You will. I can't wait. But up here first, the president says the debt ceiling debate could have us seeing images like this again. Fact or just fear? The debate next.